Hello, I'm Jon Hammant, and you are watching the Cloud Therapist channel.
Hello and welcome to the Cloud Therapist Shorts. I'm Richard Simon. Today we are talking about EKS Anywhere. EKS Anywhere, or maybe we should call it EKS Everywhere, is a solution from AWS. And I really want to welcome back my guest, Jon Hammant from AWS. Jon is the head of compute for UK and Ireland. And yeah, I've had Jon before, but it's been a little bit of a time since I've had him back. But good to see you and good to have you back again, Jon. How are you doing?
Not too bad. Great to be back. Thank you, Richard. It's always enjoy chatting to you about some of these things. I think you've done some fantastic stuff on your channel, actually. So it's very nice to be here.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you, Jon. So yeah, let's dive straight into EKS Anywhere. Can you kind of give us a sort of a quick overview of EKS Anywhere?
By all means. So EKS Anywhere is part of a suite of products that we launched back, which seems like years ago. Well, it is years ago now. Back into 2020, tail end of 2020, and effectively for us, it's this. We'll sometimes talk about the idea of cloud continuum, and that's really making sure that we're supporting customers from the region down into the kind of the hybrid sense in terms of things like local zones and our wavelength zones, which are our smaller managed pieces, but then all the way down into their data centers. So through the offerings such as Outposts, so our server ones we have, and then down into EKS Anywhere, which is really infrastructure, software that you host on your own infrastructure. At its fundamental level, EKS Anywhere is a managed Kubernetes distribution that enables you to run those same Kubernetes workloads in your data center, supported and taking advantage of a number of AWS features and functionality that sets with it.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's that you guys have kind of thought out the whole sort of that sort of link, if you like, all the way from AWS cloud all the way down to customers' data centers, kind of trying to cater for all of that. So just give me a little bit of kind of detail about what sort of EKS Anywhere is actually made of.
Yeah, definitely. So it's actually part of a suite of things that we released at the same time. So at the same time as releasing EKS Anywhere and ECS Anywhere. So effectively that being the supported version that you can plug in. Yeah, there is a marginal cost for it per cluster, but effectively it's a fully supported, fully managed piece of infrastructure. But we also released some open source stuff at the same time. So released EKS Distro. So that's the open source version. So effectively it's an open source AWS backed Kubernetes distribution. And the same as, so effectively you can go for either the open source version if you want, or you can go for EKS Anywhere, which is the supported one. So, we see people using them for different use cases. I would say if you are thinking of running Kubernetes yourself, it makes complete sense to run EKSD. It's going through a huge amount of patching work from our side of things, and it's open source and you get all the advantages from that. And then if you start to move to where you're starting to run production workloads, EKS Anywhere. I mean, effectively looking at use case, looking at why people are doing this, there's a bunch of different reasons that people often want to run containers at the edge, and they end up being things around either possibly data sovereignty, latency requirements. We have some people who want to sweat some of the assets which they have sitting in data centers. Yeah. They've moved over to using EKS Anywhere for that. But all of it, the real advantage is that ability to use the same API, the same interaction that you're used to using the cloud, but sitting within your own DC.
Sure. And you said about obviously EKS kind of distro supporting that, and this is all obviously going to be on customers' sort of environments, whether it's their on premises data center or maybe a managed sort of environment, a colo environment or something. So I read also that a couple of the design principles around EKS Anywhere was sort of a GitOps approach. So that kind of Git being the sort of this is single sort of truth for kind of the cluster and how you make up the cluster and patching and things like that. And also obviously because it's outside of sort of the normal sort of AWS cloud, it's a shared responsibility model as well with customers. It is. Cool.
And that's one of the things that's slightly different sometimes. So if you think because there is that shared responsibility model of we will help look after it from the operating system level up. So we effectively there's two ways of installing it. There's one prereq of using VMware vSphere 7, I think is the minimum needed.
Yeah.
And I believe you can also you can do it on bare metal as well, which is kind of interesting. We see most people using it on top of VMware because that gives a number of advantages in terms of that kind of supportability, run management side of the cluster. And then actually sitting on it, it's using effectively our Bottle Rocket OS, and it comes with a number of things. So it comes with a CNI, so Cilium. We've got Flux from a GitOps perspective. We've got some drivers sitting in there for CSI for storage, and we've got some interesting bits about cluster lifecycle management again via Flux and scaling a data plane via Flux as well. And then there's an option to have an EKS connector to the console as well. But it really is that point of, if you're using AWS at the moment and you feel that you want to use containers in your own data, in wherever you're running your own data center, it just makes it so much easier to do that, to move applications between. And the one thing I'd say that's kind of interesting about it is it's still managed to, it has connectivity back into the AWS control plane. So if you think that the EKS control plane service sits in AWS, so you would manage these clusters by going on to your normal AWS console or using CDK wherever you want, even though they're actually within your DC.
Cool. Yeah. So we'll get to kind of some maybe dive a little bit deeper into the advantages. So let's actually talk about the technical advantages of EKS. Now, there's obviously lots of material out there, and I'll try and include some links in the description of the video so folks can kind of go and get a little bit more information. But there's some really good, I think there's a lot of goodness in the technical aspect of it. Let's kind of talk a little bit about the sort of technical advantages of EKS Anywhere.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, some of the really things that from a low level that I think it really gives the advantages is it's the supportability, and it's the knowing that the workloads that you're running and the substrate that's running it is literally running tens of thousands of or hundreds of millions, I say, probably, of containers globally. So it's really key from us that we put out something that we've got guaranteed version consistency, we've got guaranteed updates coming, and we've got specific dependencies. And then personally, the thing for me that I think is really key in this kind of interesting, it's the security side of things. So everything running in there has been in the EKS distro itself has been hard, and that's from the open source piece upwards. So if you think you have that kind of core piece within it, the advantage you get as you go to EKS Anywhere is some of that kind of automatic management. So really making sure that we can help upgrade it, you can help run it through the AWS console. But it's that from a technical perspective, it really is, I think, that guaranteed and the surety that you're running something at production scale. Because we're seeing now, containers are becoming the dominant method of running computing at the moment, which is really, really interesting. I do think it's also worth talking. We have a fair few people using EKS Anywhere as well. So if you don't necessarily want some of those manage yourself piece of Kubernetes, it's also another option that we definitely do recommend over to folks.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think I picked up on the EKS dashboard being able to manage both environments. So whatever you've got in AWS Cloud and EKS Anywhere, you can manage both of those. And as you said, updates and patches, that's consistent with what you've got in the AWS Cloud as well. So that kind of consistent experience, right? That's a good thing.
Exactly, and I think it's that one of the things that we often hear people asking for is that single pane of glass view. How do we get to a situation where we can view the hybrid setup we have? So anything that's still in the on-prem environment, and then actually have this single viewpoint of that plus cloud. And I think that's kind of one of the real advantages that comes through it. We do definitely see there are use cases that people still want to have for that on-prem side of things. Yeah. But getting to a point where you have one set of IAM, I think that's just really, really, really key for a lot of our customers. And we're seeing very, very good market penetration in this all across multiple different areas. So there's a lot of use in financial services industry, for example. We're seeing quite a few people doing it. But it's I think that's really one of the useful things is the ability to go onto the AWS Cloud Console and have that be able to see the versioning, be able to see the details, be able to make sure everything's pulled up to go. Yeah. Making sure we understand what provider subject is, and I think that's a pretty unique thing, actually.
Cool. Yeah. No, I think that's like I said, there's definitely distinct sort of technical advantage there. So let's turn it kind of to the business advantage. It's always good to kind of bring the tech. It's always nice to kind of talking tech and so on, but it's nice to kind of bring it a little bit. What does it mean for the business? So kind of just talk us through a few of these sort of business advantages.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's all kinds of different use cases we're seeing our
Mm,
customers effectively adopt it. Normally it tends to be when there's a reason. So most the customers that are adopting it tends to be people who are relatively mature sometimes in their AWS journey,
mm,
or at least have some investment. We wouldn't necessarily suggest EKS Anywhere as being your first foray into cloud.
yeah,
So it really tends to be when you've got that investment in terms of skills, infrastructure. You're already running containers, but you're getting to a situation where there's a limit of doing it within the regions itself. So it tends to be pieces around data sovereignty, for example, where things
mm,
need to execute in specific areas, specific sites. So we've got one customer where they're doing interesting things because of licensing regulations. So certain industries, which is something I hadn't come across before, but have specific location-based licenses. So the software can only be won within effectively a geographic area. So we're seeing people
right,
using it for things like that, which is an interesting use case.
yeah,
I'd never seen one with miles in a license before, which was quite cool to see.
yeah,
So we're seeing use cases around that. We see some really interesting use cases around latency requirements, or when you have to have
right,
have to have
yeah,
the ability to run in a connected or a disconnected mode. So I suppose it's worth talking a little bit about that. Normally we would recommend, or we see most implications being EKS Anywhere connected back to the region. It can run in a disconnected
yeah,
mode for either some or a large period of time. So we've talked to people about use cases on things like oil tankers, on cruise ships, where some of that
yes,
connectivity isn't
yeah,
quite there.
yeah,
So where you're getting that spotty connectivity, it can work quite well because
mm,
effectively you have your local nodes, they're sitting there, connectivity back over to the region itself doesn't affect where it's running. So it's
sure,
kind of that hybrid piece that we see a lot of, and a lot of it comes down to people have invested significantly within AWS. It's people want supported side of things. They want this ability to have that one stack. And you can also retire it against things like EDP quota, and when you're spending money, it rolls into the overall AWS package.
sure, sure, yeah. And I think, I mean, you kind of mentioned Edge earlier, and I think that's kind of perfect for that. I also kind of picked up, as we said, we're bringing the AWS cloud sort of goodness into into sort of an on-prem environment. I think somebody mentioned that I had kind of running sort of your Kubernetes like you would do again in AWS cloud. For those customers who, this is actually a really good one and kind of maybe closer to my heart, where customers are actually looking to migrate their applications. So some of
Mm.
those kind of stateless aspects of applications can be migrated onto EKS Anywhere. And then, as you said, those are kind of constrained by regulation and sort of data security or sovereignty and things like that can still stay there, but it kind of plays that hybrid capability, and it also allows you to do cloud burst, which is fantastic.
Exactly, and I think that's where I think it's interesting because I would definitely say as people look into this, the regions are still the key place to deploy AWS
Yeah,
services if you can, just because you benefit from the economies of scale that we bring to bear. That's kind of where you'll get the most efficient pricing. But we are seeing this move for a number of different industries going further to the edge as well. And
yeah,
we've made some pretty interesting announcements so far, and there's all kinds of interesting stuff happening around our local zone setup. So we're seeing some of these edge use cases are being effectively used by deploying into the geographic network of DCs that we have and we're continuing to spend on. But there
sure,
is definitely this. Yeah, if you're running, for example, we have one interesting customer who's running an industrial control system. So they've got big machines sitting in their factory with physical things like cutting
yeah,
and moving around and stuff. And it's those kind of ones where they cannot lose connectivity for any
yeah,
period of time, no matter what happens to it. It becomes a really useful piece. But then we have to take that same code, and essentially the other use case we've seen before is having it as a substrate where people deploy their application. So if I was say for example, I was a SaaS software provider, and I was thinking, okay, well, what I really want to do is I want to be able to take my software, I want to be able to deploy it in the cloud because that's the easiest way for most of the SaaS. But certain customers don't want to do that. Certain customers,
yeah,
for whatever reason, want my application to be deployed there. We definitely see a really interesting use case as most software providers don't really want to look after the underlying Kubernetes infrastructure.
yes,
They just want to be able
exactly,
to
yeah,
run containers.
yeah.
So we're seeing a few software providers using it effectively as a substrate to deploy software into customers' data center, which is just a really beneficial thing for all parties.
Right. Yeah. Fantastic. Well, Jon, I think we can probably go on talking about it for ages, but we're unfortunately out of time. But I appreciate you, very much doing this kind of short intro to EKS Anywhere. Yeah, we'll try and provide some more information in the description of the video. There was actually a really good talk, like I said, from one of your colleagues, Alan Naim, who did like a less than 30-minute intro to EKS Anywhere, and I'll definitely recommend that. I'll include the link for that in the description of the video. Jon, let's have a conversation sometime in the future. Talk about doing a few more conversations and chats together. That would be really, really good.
Definitely. Always love coming on talking. We've got all kinds of interesting stuff in this space, and I suppose to any of your folk who are doing that, I'll be at KubeCon in Amsterdam near the end of April, something like the 18th of April, and we'll be running a specific containers day where you'll have all of our experts. So if you want more specific conversations about this, and lots and lots to do there and talk to.
Fantastic. Okay, so I think that'll be cool. Go and say hello to Jon at the AWS stand at KubeCon in Amsterdam. Excellent, Jon. Thank you very much, and thank you guys, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for watching, and please support the channel by liking and subscribing. Thank you. Bye.